Henderson stood at the docking port with a large dog at his side. The German shepherd sat quietly, watching everything with dark, intelligent eyes. His name was Bear, and he wore a vest that marked him as a certified service animal. Kept one hand on the dog's shoulder as they waited for clearance to enter the station. The space station was massive. It floated in neutral territory between star systems, a place where dozens of alien species met for important talks. Humans had joined the galactic community only 5 years ago, and most aliens still thought of them as newcomers from a primitive world. Did not care much about their opinions. He had a job to do. A security officer approached them. The alien had a body like a giant insect, with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the station lights. The creature looked then at Bear, then back at again. "What is that?" the alien asked. His voice came through a translator device. "This is Bear. He is my service animal," said calmly. "I have all the proper documentation." The alien made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "You brought an animal to a diplomatic summit." "Yes, he is approved for this mission." More aliens gathered around them. A reptilian creature with purple scales pointed at Bear and spoke to his companions in a language the translator did not bother to interpret. They were laughing, could tell without needing translation. "This is unusual," the insect alien said. His name badge identified him as security chief, or, "We do not allow pets on this station." Bear is not a pet. He is a registered emotional support animal. Earth law requires reasonable accommodation for service animals. Handed over a data pad with all the necessary documents. Or examined the information with 2 of his eyes while the other 2 kept watching Bear. The dog had not moved. He sat perfectly still, his training evident in every calm breath. "This is a diplomatic station, not Earth," Or said. "Your laws do not apply here." A human woman walked up to join them. She wore the uniform of a senior diplomat. "Actually, they do," Ambassador Lisa Grant said firmly. "The treaty we signed specifically protects cultural practices, including service animal accommodations. Officer Henderson has every right to bring Bear." Or's antennae twitched with irritation. "Very well, but the animal must remain in his quarters during all official sessions." "That is acceptable," said. The ambassador gave him a small nod of approval, picked up his bag and walked past the gathered aliens with Bear at his heel. He heard them talking behind him, their voices mixing together in a sound that clearly meant mockery. One alien made a barking sound that sent his companions into fits of laughter. Bear's ears moved slightly, but he kept walking beside without reaction. The dog had been trained for much worse than this. The quarters assigned to were small but functional. He set down his bag and removed Bear's vest, letting the dog relax. Bear immediately went to the water bowl had set up and drank deeply. Space travel was hard on everyone, even dogs. Sat on the narrow bed and ran his hand through Bear's thick fur. The dog leaned against his leg, offering silent comfort. They had been together for 3 years now, ever since the incident at Europa Station. Tried not to think about Europa. The colony raid had killed 60 people. Survived only because Bear had alerted him seconds before the attackers breached the habitat dome. Those few seconds made the difference between life and death. Since then, could not sleep well without Bear nearby. The nightmares came less often when he could reach out in the dark and feel warm fur under his hand. A psychologist had certified Bear as an emotional support animal. The military had approved his continued service with. Some people did not understand. They thought it was weakness to need an animal for emotional stability. Had learned not to care about their opinions. His communicator buzzed. It was Dr. Lisa, one of the human on the station. "Hey, I heard about the welcoming committee. You okay?" "Fine, just the usual skepticism." "Want to grab some food? I could use a friendly face." "Give me 20 minutes." Changed into casual clothes and put Bear's vest back on. They found Doctor in one of the smaller dining areas. She smiled when she saw them and waved them over. "Hello, Bear," she said warmly. The dog's tail wagged once. "I swear half the delegates have been talking about nothing else. You would think they had never seen a dog before." "Most of them have not," said. He ordered food from the automated system and sat down. Bear lay at his feet under the table. "It is ignorant," Doctor said. "Earth has thousands of years of history working with animals. Dogs helped us hunt, guarded our homes, herded our livestock. That partnership made civilization possible. They do not see it that way. They think we are primitive for forming emotional bonds with other species." "Then they are fools." Doctor took a bite of her meal. "How is Ambassador Grant holding up?" "She seems confident. The trade negotiations start tomorrow." "Good, we need this agreement." Doctor lowered her voice. "Between you and me, some of the other species are pushing hard against human interests. They still do not take us seriously." Nodded. He had heard the same rumors. Earth was resource-rich but militarily weak compared to older galactic powers. Some species saw humanity as easy to exploit. Bear's head suddenly lifted. His ears pointed toward the doorway, followed his gaze but saw nothing unusual, just more aliens passing by in the corridor. "What is it, boy?" asked quietly. Bear stared for another moment, then settled back down, but something in his posture had changed. Knew that look. It was the same alertness Bear showed when he sensed danger. "Everything okay?" Doctor asked. "Yeah," Bear is just adjusting to the new environment. But was not entirely sure. Bear had good instincts, better than most sensors. If something felt wrong to the dog, paid attention. They finished eating and walked Doctor back to her lab. The station was enormous, with multiple levels and sections for different purposes. The diplomatic areas were at the center, surrounded by residential zones, then maintenance and engineering on the outer rings. Returned to his quarters and let Bear off the vest again. He tried to relax, but his mind kept replaying the mockery from the docking port, the pointing fingers, the laughter, the assumption that bringing Bear made him weak. Let them think what they wanted. Knew the truth. Bear had saved his life. The dog had training that most aliens could not imagine. He was not just an emotional support animal. He was a retired military working dog with 3 years of combat experience before joining. Bear suddenly stood up, his body tense. He walked to the door and sniffed at the gap underneath. A low rumble came from his chest. Stood and moved to the door panel. He checked the corridor camera feed. Nothing visible, but Bear did not relax. "What do you hear, boy?" Bear's ears swiveled, tracking sounds could not detect. The station was full of noises, life support systems, ventilation, hundreds of beings moving about their business. But Bear had isolated something specific. Trusted that instinct. Something was wrong on the station. He could feel it now too, a tension in the air that had nothing to do with diplomatic negotiations. He just did not know what it was yet. Outside his door, the station continued its normal routine. Aliens walked past, discussing their various agendas. None of them knew that the human with his dog had already detected the first signs of danger. And none of them would believe it if tried to warn them. Not yet. 3 days passed on the station. The diplomatic summit moved forward with typical slowness. Delegates argued over resource rights, trade routes, and territorial boundaries. Performed his security duties while Ambassador Grant navigated the complex negotiations. The mockery had not stopped. If anything, it had gotten worse. Walked through the corridors with Bear at his side during his off-duty hours. Aliens would stop their conversations to stare. Some pointed openly. Others made sounds that their species used for laughter. A few brave ones asked questions, but most just treated Bear like an amusing curiosity. On the third evening, entered the recreation lounge. He needed a break from the small quarters, and this area was open to all station personnel. Several groups of aliens sat at various tables, talking and drinking. The conversations died down when walked in with Bear. He ignored the stares and moved to the beverage dispenser. Bear sat beside him, calm and professional as always. Had just received his coffee when a loud voice called out across the room. Look, the human brought his pet again. Turned. A massive alien stood near the center of the lounge. He had gray skin like stone and 4 arms, each thick with muscle. The translator identified him as Commander Al, a military officer from the Empire. Bear is a service animal, not a pet, said evenly. Service animal, Al repeated, making the word sound ridiculous. What service does it provide? Does it fight your battles? Does it make your decisions? The other aliens in the lounge laughed, recognized several delegates from different species. The reptilian, the crystalline, even some of the typically polite joined in the amusement. He provides companionship and emotional support, said. This brought another round of laughter. Al walked closer, his 4 arms crossed over his broad chest. Emotional support. The human admits he is too weak to function without an animal. It is not weakness to acknowledge trauma and seek help, replied. In culture, warriors who cannot stand alone are removed from service, Al said. We have no use for those who need emotional support. A delegate joined the conversation. Her scales were bright green and she wore elaborate jewelry that marked her high status. This is why humanity will never be a major power in the galaxy. You are too soft, too emotional. You bring animals to diplomatic summits and claim this is strength. Took a sip of his coffee. His military training kept his face neutral. Getting angry would only prove their point. Earth's culture values different things than yours. Clearly, the said with disdain, and that is why you will always be minor players. Bear remained sitting, but his eyes tracked every alien in the room. Noticed the slight tension in the dog's shoulders. Bear was reading the situation, assessing potential threats. His training never turned off. A smaller alien approached them. It had purple fur and 6 legs, a scientist named Or. May I touch the animal? The alien asked. No, said firmly. Bear is working. Do not touch a service animal without permission. Working, or tilted his head. What work is it doing? It just sits there. That is the work, remaining calm and providing support. Or reached out anyway. Bear did not move, but a low sound came from his throat. Not quite a growl, just a warning. The pulled his paw back quickly. See, Al said loudly. The animal is aggressive. It should not be allowed here. Bear gave a warning because you ignored his boundaries, explained. He is trained to alert without attacking. That is discipline, not aggression. Ambassador Grant entered the lounge at that moment. She took in the scene with one quick glance and moved to stand beside. Is there a problem here? No problem, Ambassador, Al said. We were just discussing your species' interesting customs. By interesting, you mean mocking, Grant said flatly. I have heard the comments, the laughter, the assumption that working with animals makes us weak. The delegate spoke up. You must admit, Ambassador, it is unusual. No other spacefaring species maintains such close bonds with non-sapient creatures. That is because Earth is different, Grant replied. Our planet developed incredible biodiversity. Humans evolved alongside thousands of predator species. We learned to cooperate with some and defend against others. That experience shaped our culture in ways you cannot understand. Or perhaps you simply never evolved past primitive pack behavior, Al suggested. Grant's expression hardened. You know, Commander, other species have underestimated humanity before. They assumed our compassion meant weakness. Our cooperation meant cowardice. They learned differently, but it cost them. Are you threatening us, Ambassador? The scales darkened slightly. Not at all. I am simply reminding you that making assumptions about cultures you do not understand is dangerous. Grant looked at each of the aliens in turn. Earth has survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We tamed animals that could kill us. We built partnerships with species that had every reason to see us as prey. That required strength, not weakness. Al made a dismissive gesture with two of his hands. Pretty words, ambassador, but words do not change reality. Your human stands here with an animal because he cannot function alone. That is weakness. Set down his coffee cup. You are entitled to your opinion, Commander, but I would not confuse emotional intelligence with weakness if I were you. Is that a challenge? Al stepped closer. It is a statement of fact. Did not move. Bear stood up now, positioning himself slightly in front of. The dog's body language had shifted into something more alert. Ambassador Grant put a hand on his arm. Come on, let's not waste our time here. Nodded and turned to leave. Behind him, he heard the renewed laughter. The aliens found the whole situation entertaining. A human and his pet retreating from confrontation. It fit their assumptions perfectly. As they walked down the corridor, Grant spoke quietly. Do not let them get to you. They are ignorant. I know, ma'am. I have dealt with worse. Have you really? Because most of the people who doubt you have not seen what you and Bear can do. Glanced down at the dog walking beside him. No, they have not. They reached a junction point where their paths separated. Grant headed toward her quarters while continued his patrol route. But before she left, the ambassador had one more thing to say. Keep alert, something feels off about this summit. Too many species with conflicting interests in one place. The tensions are higher than they should be. I have noticed that too, ma'am. Trust your instincts and Bear's. She looked at the dog with respect. I think he knows more than we do. After Grant left, completed his patrol with Bear. The dog remained unusually alert. His attention focused on sounds and scents could not detect. They passed maintenance access panels and service corridors. Several times Bear paused, his nose working at gaps in the walls. Made notes on his data pad. Nothing concrete, just a feeling that matched Bear's behavior. Something was not right on the station. He tried to contact Doctor to discuss it, but she did not answer. That was unusual. She always responded quickly, left a message and continued his rounds. The station lights dimmed slightly, indicating the start of night cycle. Most beings followed similar circadian rhythms, so the station adjusted its lighting to match. Headed back to his quarters. As he walked, he passed a group of maintenance workers. They were aliens he did not recognize, wearing standard station uniforms, but something about them seemed wrong. They moved with too much purpose, too much awareness. Not like janitors or engineers, more like soldiers trying to look like workers. Bear's hackles rose slightly. The dog sensed it too. Made note of their location and appearance but did not approach. If they were trouble, better to observe and report than confront alone. He continued walking, acting casual. Back in his quarters, filed a security report about the suspicious workers. He also sent another message to Doctor, this time expressing concern about her silence. Bear paced near the door, unable to settle. The dog kept looking at the entrance, then back at the door. His message was clear. Something was coming. Checked his sidearm, making sure it was fully charged. He laid out his tactical gear where he could reach it quickly. Then he sat on the bed and waited. The station hummed around them with the normal sounds of life support. Ventilation, power systems, the distant murmur of thousands of beings living and working in close proximity. But underneath it all, felt a tension building. Bear felt it too. The dog had not been wrong yet. At midnight station time, the lights flickered, just for a second but enough to notice. Stood up and moved to his door panel. The corridor outside looked normal. Then his communicator buzzed with an emergency alert. The message started to form on the screen, then cut off abruptly. The lights flickered again. This time they stayed dim. Bear growled low in his chest, facing the door. Grabbed his weapon and tactical vest. Whatever was happening, it was starting now, and every instinct he had, every warning from Bear, told him this was going to be bad. Very bad. The station's emergency lighting cast everything in red. Strapped on his tactical vest and checked his weapon one more time, Bear stood at the door, every muscle tense and ready. The dog knew what the vest meant. They were going to work. Opened the door carefully. The corridor outside was empty, but he could hear sounds in the distance. Shouting, running footsteps. Something had gone very wrong very quickly. His communicator was dead. Whatever had caused the power failure had also taken out the main communication network. Switched to his backup unit, a military-grade device with its own encryption. Still nothing. Someone was jamming all frequencies. "Come on, boy," said quietly. Bear moved into the corridor beside him, nose working to read the air. They moved toward the central section of the station. Other doors opened as confused aliens emerged to see what was happening, warned them to stay in their quarters and seal their doors. Some listened. Others ignored him. Bear led the way through the dim corridors. The dog moved with purpose, following scents and sounds could not detect. They passed through a maintenance junction when Bear suddenly stopped. He sniffed at a wall panel, then pawed at it. Examined the panel, scorch marks around the edges. Someone had forced it open recently. He hit further and looked inside. The wiring had been cut deliberately, not a malfunction, sabotage. A sound echoed down the corridor. Footsteps, heavy ones, multiple beings moving together with military precision, pulled Bear into a side passage and waited. 6 figures emerged from around the corner. They wore combat armor and carried energy weapons. The armor was marked with symbols recognized from intelligence briefings. Raiders, pirates who specialized in hostage situations and ransom demands. The raiders moved past his hiding spot without noticing him. They were speaking in their own language, confident and relaxed. They thought they had complete control of the situation. Counted to 10 after they passed, then continued in the opposite direction. He needed to find out how many raiders were on the station and what they wanted. But more importantly, he needed to reach the diplomatic section where Ambassador Grant would be. Bear's ears swiveled forward. He heard something ahead, slowed their pace, moving more carefully now. They reached another junction and Bear paused, his body going rigid. Around the corner, heard voices. He risked a quick look. 3 more raiders stood guard at an intersection. They were blocking the main route to the conference halls. Pulled back and considered his options. He could not fight 3 armed raiders in open corridor, not without backup and better positioning. He needed another route. Bear tugged at sleeve with his teeth, then moved toward a maintenance access door. The dog had found an alternative path. Followed, and they entered the narrow service passages that ran behind the main corridors. The passages were barely tall enough for to move through crouched. They were meant for maintenance drones and small repair crews, but they connected to most areas of the station, perfect for moving unseen. They crawled through the tight spaces for what felt like forever. Bear navigated confidently, his sense of direction far better than's. Several times they heard voices through the walls as raiders moved through the main corridors. His communicator suddenly crackled to life. A voice came through, broken and distorted. "Hostages, conference hall, demands shuttle access." Then static again. At least he had partial information now. The raiders had taken hostages in the main conference hall. That was where all the diplomatic delegates would be, including Ambassador Grant. The raiders wanted shuttles, which meant they planned to take the hostages and leave. Standard pirate tactics. But was not going to let that happen. They emerged from the maintenance passages into a storage area near the conference level. Could hear more activity now. The raiders were coordinating their positions, securing their perimeter. Professional operation. These were not random thugs. They had planned this carefully. Bear's hackles rose. 3 raiders came around a corner directly in front of them. For a moment, everyone froze. The raiders looked then at the dog. Then they started laughing. "A human," one raider said in heavily accented standard, "with a pet." "Put down your weapon, human," another raider ordered. "You are alone, you cannot fight us." Raised his weapon but did not fire. 3-on-1 with bear. Not great odds, but he had faced worse. "You are making a mistake. Let the hostages go and you might survive this." The raiders found this hilarious. "You hear that? The human with his little animal is threatening us." The lead raider aimed his weapon at casually, not even taking him seriously as a threat. "We will take you to the others. You can watch while we execute the first hostage." That was a mistake. The raider's attention was not on Bear, and he had just threatened the hostages. His hand moved to a specific spot on Bear's tactical vest, a small snap that released a restraint. It was a signal they had practiced hundreds of times, the one that meant Bear was now weapons-free. The dog exploded into motion. Bear moved faster than the raiders expected, faster than most beings could react. He went for the lead raider's weapon arm, 80 pounds of trained muscle and focused aggression. His teeth found the raider's wrist and clamped down hard. The weapon clattered to the floor. The second raider tried to aim at Bear but was already moving. His military training took over. Close the distance. Control the weapon. Strike hard. The raider went down with his elbow in his throat. The third raider finally understood the situation. This was not a human with a pet. This was a combat team. He tried to back away and call for help on his communicator. Bear was there before he could speak. Not biting this time, just body checking the raider hard enough to slam him into the wall. The raider dropped, stunned. Moved quickly. He secured all 3 raiders with zip ties from his vest, took their weapons and communication devices. The whole fight had lasted less than 15 seconds. Bear returned to side, breathing heavily but otherwise calm. His training was complete. Attack on command, stop on command, return to handler. Perfect discipline. Checked the raider's communicator. It was still receiving transmissions. He listened carefully. The main raider force had secured the conference hall with approximately 15 more raiders. They had taken all the delegates hostage. Their leader was negotiating with station security, making demands. But station security could not respond. The raiders had used the sabotage systems to seal bulkheads and trap the main security forces in wrong sections. The few security officers in the right area had been killed or captured, and Bear were the only response force available. 15 raiders against 1 human and 1 dog. Impossible odds by any reasonable measure. But had stopped thinking reasonably the moment he saw the raider aim a weapon at him so casually. These pirates had underestimated him. They had underestimated Bear, and they had no idea what Earth's military training programs could produce. Access the station's emergency systems through a maintenance terminal. The raiders had locked out main controls, but the backup systems still functioned. He sent a message to any security personnel still free, explaining his position and the situation. A response came back quickly. It was Doctor. She was hiding in a lab near the conference level. She could see some of the raiders through security cameras that still worked in her area. Sent back a message. "Stay hidden. Do not engage. I am coming." He studied the layout of the conference level on the terminal's map. Multiple entry points, but all would be guarded. The raiders had positioned themselves well. Direct assault would fail. But did not plan a direct assault. He planned something else entirely, something that would use the raiders' own arrogance against them. They thought Bear was just a pet. They had laughed at the idea of a human needing an animal. That was their weakness. They did not understand what Bear really was. They were about to learn. Moved toward the conference level with Bear at his side. He stayed in the maintenance passages where possible, using the raiders' own communication device to track their positions. Every few minutes he emerged to take out isolated guards. Bear's speed and precision made each encounter brief and silent. Bodies did not disappear on their own, but moved them into storage rooms and sealed the doors. Let the other raiders wonder where their comrades went. Let them start to feel uncertain. He could hear it in their communications, growing unease, guards calling to each other more frequently, jokes becoming fewer. The unknown was working on them. Good. Reached a ventilation shaft that overlooked the main conference hall. He crawled through quietly and found a spot where he could see below. The sight made his jaw tight with anger. All the delegates sat on the floor with their hands bound. Ambassador Grant was near the front, her face calm despite the situation. Commander Al was beside her, looking far less confident than he had in the recreation lounge. The delegate who had mocked was there too. All the aliens who had laughed at him and Bear now sat helpless under armed guard. The raider leader stood at the center of the hall. He was a big with scars across his face and an air of command. He was talking into a communicator, making threats, demanding shuttle access or he would start killing hostages. Counted the raiders, 12 in the hall, 3 more should be outside guarding the entrances. 15 total minus the 3 he had already captured, 12 left. Still impossible odds. Bear looked up at through the ventilation grate. The dog's eyes held complete trust and readiness, waiting for orders, ready to do whatever was needed. Smiled slightly. These raiders had no idea what they were up against. They thought they were fighting a human and his pet. They were about to meet an Earth predator and his partner. And when Bear growled in that hall, everyone would understand their mistake. Watched through the ventilation grate as the raider leader paced in front of the hostages. The alien's name was, according to his communications. He was getting impatient. Station security was stalling on his demands, buying time for a response that was not coming. Except it was. It just was not what anyone expected. Studied the layout carefully. The conference hall was large with a high ceiling. The raiders had positioned themselves at every entrance with heavy weapons. Smart tactical thinking. Any conventional rescue attempt would turn into a bloodbath. But was not planning a conventional rescue. He moved through the ventilation system silently. Bear followed, his paws barely making sound on the metal. They had practiced moving through tight spaces during training. This was just another exercise to the dog. They passed over another group of raiders, listened to their conversation. The missing guards were finally being noticed. 3 patrols had not reported in. Was getting angry, demanding to know where his soldiers were. Nobody had answers. The raiders were searching but finding nothing except empty corridors. Had hidden the captured raiders well. And he had also taken their communication devices, so he knew exactly where the search teams were going. He led them on a chase through empty sections, sent false signals that drew them away from his actual position. Basic guerrilla tactics that the raiders were not prepared for. Reached a junction point in the ventilation system that connected to multiple areas. He set up position in the upper gallery that overlooked the conference hall. From here, he had clear sight lines to most of the raiders below, but engaging from this position was still suicide. 12 armed raiders would fill the gallery with weapons fire before he could take down more than 2 or 3. He needed a different approach, one that would create chaos and confusion, one that would turn the raiders' confidence into fear. And he knew exactly how to do it. Sent Bear through a side passage that led to a maintenance door near one of the hall's entrances. The dog moved on silent paws, following the route they had planned. Watched through cracks in the ventilation as Bear got into position. Then used one of the captured communication devices. He set it to broadcast on the raiders' frequency and spoke clearly. "This is Officer Henderson of Earth Security. You are surrounded. Release the hostages and surrender or face the consequences." The transmission echoed through the hall below. Every raider looked up, searching for the source, grabbed his own communicator. "Who is this? How did you get this frequency?" "Your guards were kind enough to provide it, before I left them tied up in storage bay 7. His face changed. The scars on his face seemed to darken. "You took out 3 of my soldiers." "Yes, and I will take out the rest if you do not surrender." The raiders in the hall started talking among themselves. Nervous energy spread through their ranks. 3 of their own had been captured without anyone hearing a thing. Tried to regain control. "You are bluffing, human. One security officer cannot defeat my entire force. Want to bet the lives of your soldiers on that." Watched as more raiders were sent to check on their missing comrades. The force in the conference hall was down to 9 now. Better odds, but still not good enough for a direct attack. He needed to reduce the numbers more, and he needed to break their morale. Moved through the ventilation system to another position. He found a spot where 2 raiders stood guard at a side entrance. They were talking in low voices, clearly worried about the missing patrols. Carefully removed a grate and dropped down behind them. Before either could react, he had them both disarmed and unconscious. He dragged their bodies into a storage closet and sealed it. Then he used their communicators to report back to Entrance 3 secure, no sign of the human. He repeated this process twice more, each time taking out isolated raiders, each time reporting back that everything was fine. By the time realized what was happening, had reduced the raider force by half. The raider leader was furious now, could hear it in his voice over the communications. "Find that human. I want him alive so I can kill him slowly in front of the hostages." But the raiders were scared now. They moved in larger groups, no longer confident. They jumped at every sound. The unknown was eating at them. Returned to his position in the upper gallery. 7 raiders remained in the conference hall, including 3 more were somewhere in the corridors, searching as a group. Time to end this. Set up his final position. He had a clear shot at most of the raiders from here, but he needed them looking in the wrong direction. He needed their attention completely focused away from him. He needed them looking at Bear. Activated his backup communicator, the one only he and Bear could hear. The dog's vest had a small receiver built in, sent the command signal, a specific tone that told Bear exactly what to do. Bear had been waiting at the side entrance, completely still and silent. Now he moved forward. The maintenance door opened with a soft hiss. Watched as every eye in the hall turned toward the entrance, weapons raised. Nervous energy became focused tension. Bear stepped into the doorway and stopped. The emergency lighting cast his shadow across the floor, making him look larger than he was. His ears were forward, his body low and coiled. Every instinct from thousands of years of predator evolution showed in his stance. The raiders saw an animal, the hostages saw a dog, but something deeper in all their minds recognized what Bear truly was: a hunter. A predator that had brought down prey since before any of these species had reached the stars. Ambassador Grant saw him and her eyes widened with understanding. She knew what was coming. She began shifting her position slightly, preparing to move when chaos erupted. Stared at the dog. "That is the human's pet. That is what we were worried about." The other raiders laughed nervously. One of them raised his weapon at Bear. "Should I shoot it?" "No," said. "Capture it. We will use it to make the human surrender." 2 raiders moved toward Bear. The dog did not move. He stood perfectly still, watching them approach, waiting. His finger tightened on his weapon's trigger. He had clear shots now. Every raider in the hall was focused on Bear. None of them were looking up at the gallery. But he held his fire. Not yet. 1 more second. The 2 raiders reached for Bear, thinking him just a frightened animal. One of them actually made a cooing sound, like he was calling a pet. That was when Bear growled. It was not the warning sound he had made in the recreation lounge. This was something primal, a deep rumble that came from his chest and seemed to fill the entire hall. The sound echoed off the walls, growing louder and more menacing. Every being in that room froze, not from conscious thought but from instinct. The kind of instinct that had kept their ancestors alive on their own dangerous worlds. The instinct that said a predator was near and survival depended on not moving. The two raiders closest to Bear backed away slowly, their weapons forgotten, their training forgotten, every part of their brains screaming at them to retreat from this creature. Bear took one step forward, then another. His growl never stopped. It rose and fell like a warning siren from ancient times when Earth's predators ruled the night. Tried to recover control. It is just an animal, shoot it. But none of his raiders moved. They were paralyzed by something older than technology, older than space travel, the fear that every species carried in their genes from when they were prey. Ambassador Grant used the moment. She shouted to the other hostages, "Get down now." The delegates dropped flat to the floor. The raiders' attention broke. They tried to recover, to remember they were armed warriors facing a single dog. Fired his first shot before they could react. The raider nearest to went down. Then another. The elements of surprise and height gave perfect advantage. Bear launched forward at the same instant. Not random aggression but precise military training. He went for the weapons first, targeting arms and hands, disarming rather than killing, just as he had been trained. Chaos erupted. Raiders tried to fight on two fronts. Some aimed at the gallery where shots came from. Others tried to defend against the 80 pounds of fury that was Bear. None of them succeeded at either. The three raiders in the corridors heard the noise and came running. They burst into the hall and saw the scene. Their commander under attack, their fellow raiders falling, a human shooting from above and a beast tearing through their ranks below. They hesitated. That hesitation cost them. Station security finally broke through the sealed bulkheads. They had been cutting through for the past hour, and the sound of weapons fire gave them new urgency. They poured into the conference hall from multiple entrances, weapons ready. The remaining raiders surrendered immediately. They threw down their weapons and raised their hands. Some of them kept their eyes on Bear, who stood over a fallen raider with his teeth bared. Climbed down from the gallery. He gave Bear the stand-down command and the dog immediately backed away, returning to calm service animal mode. The transformation was instant and complete. Lay on the floor with security officers surrounding him. He stared at with hatred and disbelief. A human and a pet defeated my entire team. Walked past him without responding. He had more important concerns. He moved to where Ambassador Grant was getting to her feet. "Are you hurt, ma'am?" "No, I am fine." She looked at Bear, who sat calmly at side as if nothing had happened. That was incredible. Commander Al approached slowly. The big looked at, then at Bear, then back at. His four arms hung at his sides, no longer crossed with confidence. "I was wrong," Al said quietly. "We were all wrong." Just nodded. He was too tired for speeches, too drained from the adrenaline. He just wanted to check on his dog and make sure the ambassador was truly safe. But around him, the aliens were learning a lesson they would never forget. They had pointed and laughed at the human with his animal. They had mocked the bond as weakness. One growl had silenced their laughter and showed them what Earth's partnerships truly meant. The medical teams moved through the conference hall, checking every hostage for injuries. Station security processed the captured raiders, binding them properly and reading their rights according to galactic law. Sat against a wall with Bear lying at his feet, watching everything with tired eyes. Ambassador Grant brought him water and a ration bar. "You need to eat something." That was a lot of action for one person. "I was not alone," said, scratching behind Bear's ears. The dog's tail wagged once. "No, you were not." Grant sat down beside him. "That was the most extraordinary display of teamwork I have ever witnessed. human and animal moving as one unit. That is what we trained for, ma'am. Bear is a military working dog, or was before he retired to support duty. Nothing about that was retired, Grant said with a slight smile. He moved like a weapon. He is a weapon, but also a companion. Earth learned a long time ago that the two things are not exclusive. Doctor appeared through the crowd, relief obvious on her face. I was so worried. When the raiders started falling and nobody knew how, I thought maybe you were. She trailed off and just hugged him instead. I am fine, Bear is fine, that is what matters. Security chief approached them. The alien stood quietly for a moment, his compound eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. Officer Henderson, I owe you an apology. For what? For doubting you at the docking port, for questioning the presence of your animal, for not understanding what I was seeing, or gestured toward Bear. I have been security chief for 12 years. I have seen hundreds of species and their methods, but I have never seen anything like what you two did today. Bear is well trained, said simply. It is more than training. It is partnership, trust, something we do not have in culture, or clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. We will be revising our security protocols, and we will be adding Earth methods to our training programs. Other aliens began approaching. The delegate who had mocked 3 days ago came forward slowly, her green scales showing patterns that meant respect in her species. Officer Henderson, I must apologize for my words in the recreation lounge. I called your bond with Bear a weakness. I was completely wrong. You were judging by your own cultural standards, said without anger. Most species would. But we should have known better. The galaxy is vast and diverse. Assuming our way is the only way is arrogance. She looked at Bear with new eyes. May I ask what kind of creature he is? A dog, a canine from Earth. His species has lived alongside humans for over 30,000 years. The numbers seemed to stun her. 30,000 years of partnership. Yes, dogs helped us hunt when we were still primitive. They guarded our homes, protected our children, herded our food animals. In return, we gave them food, shelter, and companionship. Both species evolved together. Commander Al joined the growing group around. The big looked uncomfortable, his 4 arms shifting with uncertainty. I said you were weak for needing an animal. I was a fool. You and Bear took down 15 trained raiders, something my best soldiers could not have done. You were not a fool, just uninformed. Stood up slowly, his muscles sore from the fighting. Bear stood with him, stretching in a way that showed he was tired too. Earth is different from most worlds. We had to be. Our planet was incredibly dangerous. Tell us, the delegate said. Help us understand. Looked around at the gathered aliens. They were not mocking now. They were genuinely curious, wanting to learn. He glanced at Ambassador Grant, who nodded encouragement. Earth has more large predators than most habitable worlds, began. Bears that could tear apart vehicles, cats that hunted from shadows, wolves that worked in packs to bring down prey 10 times their size, and in the oceans, creatures that made our legends look tame. The aliens listened in silence. Humans were not the strongest, not the fastest, not the best adapted for any single environment, but we had something else. We had the ability to learn, to adapt, and most importantly, to form alliances with other species. With predators, one alien asked. Yes, we saw wolves hunting in packs and recognized something familiar. Both our species worked together, both protected our young, both valued loyalty, so we made a deal. We would share our food and fire. They would help us hunt and guard our camps. Over thousands of years, wolves became dogs, changed by evolution and selection into hundreds of different forms, all designed to work with humans. Gestured to Bear. This breed was created to be intelligent, loyal, and brave. German shepherds can learn hundreds of commands. They can smell things we cannot detect, hear sounds beyond our range. They can work in extreme heat or cold, and they will protect their human partner with their life. But they can also kill, Commander Al said quietly. Yes, because we needed partners who could do both. Protect us from threats and comfort us when we were afraid. That duality is what makes the bond so powerful. Doctor spoke up from beside. Most species in the galaxy avoided their planet's predators or hunted them to extinction. Humans did something different. We tried to understand them, and when possible, we became friends with them. Not just dogs, Ambassador Grant added. Humans have domesticated hundreds of species, horses that carried us into battle, birds that helped us hunt, even cats, small predators that kept our food stores safe from vermin. Earth's culture is built on cooperation. The aliens absorbed this information, could see them processing it, comparing it to their own worlds and histories. None of them had anything similar. A young scientist, not or but someone younger, approached Bear carefully. May I meet him properly? I would like to apologize for my species' behavior. Looked at Bear, who was watching the alien with calm eyes. Bear, this person wants to say hello, be nice. The young knelt down slowly and extended a paw. Bear sniffed it carefully, then allowed himself to be petted. His tail wagged gently. He is so soft, the alien said with wonder, and warm. I thought he would feel dangerous. He is both soft and dangerous, said. That is the point. He can be whatever the situation requires. More aliens came forward one by one, each asking permission, each approaching with respect instead of mockery. Bear greeted them all patiently, his service animal training showing through. Even the raider leader watched from where security held him, saw the alien staring at Bear with something that might have been fear or might have been respect, probably both. You humans are strange, said loudly. You make weapons out of friendship, partnerships out of predators. No wonder you are so dangerous. Ambassador Grant walked over to face the raider. That is the lesson here. You attacked this station because you thought the delegates would be easy targets, soft diplomats with minimal security. You did not account for Earth's methods. I will not make that mistake again, said bitterly. Good, tell your fellow pirates. Tell anyone who will listen. Humans are not weak because we value bonds. We are strong because of them. Station security took away. The other raiders followed, all of them looking at Bear one last time as they left. Suspected the story would spread through the criminal underworld quickly. How a human and a dog had defeated an entire raider team. Let it spread. Maybe it would make other criminals think twice before attacking human interests. The diplomatic summit resumed 2 days later. The delegates had recovered from their ordeal and were even more motivated to reach agreements. Nothing brought species together like surviving danger together. Stood at his usual security post while Ambassador Grant negotiated. Bear lay beside him, back to wearing his service animal vest. But now when aliens passed them in the corridor, they nodded respectfully. Some even asked questions about Earth's animals and training methods. The mockery was gone, replaced by curiosity and respect. During a break, took Bear to the recreation lounge, the same place where Commander Al had made fun of them. Now the room fell silent when they entered, but not from mockery, from respect. Got his coffee and sat at a table. Bear lay at his feet, relaxed and content. Within minutes, aliens began approaching, not to mock but to talk, to learn, to understand. A child came with her parent, eyes wide with wonder. Is that the dog who protected everyone? She asked in a small voice. This is Bear, said gently. Would you like to pet him? The child looked at her parent, who nodded permission. She approached slowly and placed her small hand on Bear's head. The dog sat perfectly still, letting her touch his fur. He is a good dog, the child said solemnly. Yes, he is. The child's parent smiled. My daughter wants a dog now. She has talked about nothing else since the rescue. I have been researching Earth's animal exports. Chuckled, dogs require a lot of care and attention. But yes, they make excellent companions. Can they all do what Bear did? With proper training, many dogs can. But Bear had years of military service before coming to me. He is exceptional even among his kind. Doctor joined at the table with her own meal. You know what this means, right? Earth's diplomatic status just changed completely. Everyone wants to know more about our planet now, about our animals, about our methods. Is that good? Very good. We were minor players before. Now we are interesting, valuable. Every species wants to understand how we turned predators into partners. Ambassador Grant appeared beside them. Doctor is right. I have had 12 different species ask about establishing cultural exchanges with Earth. They want to study our biodiversity, our domestication programs. Some even want to adopt Earth animals for their own worlds. That seems fast, said. Fear and respect work quickly, Grant replied. A week ago they mocked us. Now they respect us. That is how change happens in galactic politics. Looked down at Bear, who had fallen asleep with his head on its boot, the dog who had been pointed at and laughed at, who aliens had called a sign of human weakness. This same dog had saved dozens of lives and changed how an entire galaxy saw humanity. I hope they remember the lesson, said quietly. Oh, they will, Grant assured him. Every species that was in that conference hall when Bear growled will remember that sound for the rest of their lives. Primal fear crosses all cultural boundaries. Good, maybe it will make them think twice before assuming anything about Earth. The diplomatic summit ended successfully. Trade agreements were signed. Alliance talks scheduled. Earth's position in the galactic community shifted from curious newcomer to valued partner. And Bear returned to Earth 3 weeks later. They walked through the spaceport with the same quiet professionalism they had shown on the station. But now humans who saw Bear's tactical vest understood what it really meant. Not just emotional support but partnership, friendship, trust built through shared danger. Commander met them at the arrival gate. I heard what happened. The full story reached military command. You and Bear performed admirably. We did our job, sir. You did more than that. You changed how aliens see all of us. Command wants you to lead a new training program, teaching other handlers and their dogs for diplomatic security. Looked at Bear, who looked back at him with those intelligent dark eyes. Will we still work together? Of course. You two are a proven team, but now you will help create more teams like yours. I can do that, sir. Later that night, in his own quarters on Earth, sat with Bear in comfortable silence. The dog rested his head on its knee, content to be home. Outside, Earth's moon rose over the mountains. The same moon that had watched humanity evolve alongside wolves thousands of years ago. You did good, boy, said softly. They understand now. They know what we are together. Bear's tail wagged once. That was enough. The galaxy had learned its lesson. When humans arrived with their beasts, they brought partnership, loyalty, and strength. They brought bonds that had been forged in Earth's dangerous past and refined over thousands of years. And they brought a simple truth that aliens were only beginning to understand. The strongest bonds are not chains of dominance. They are ties of mutual respect, trust, and love. Humans did not conquer their planet's predators. They befriended them, and that made all the difference. Bear growled once in the conference hall. Once was enough. The room that had pointed and laughed fell silent and stayed silent, because they finally understood what Earth had always known. A good dog is never just a pet. A good dog is family, partner, protector, friend. And sometimes, when needed, a good dog is the weapon that changes everything. The galaxy learned that lesson the hard way, but they learned it well, and they would never forget the sound of Bear's growl echoing through that hall, teaching them all what it meant to underestimate Earth's bonds. Never again would they laugh at a human and their animal, because now they knew the truth. That bond was not weakness. It was Earth's greatest strength, and it had been there all along, waiting for the moment when one growl would silence an entire room and change the galaxy forever.